and welcome everyone on behalf of Samvad Boston. Samvad is a space for artists and practitioners of traditional Indian arts to come together for critical discussions on arts and aesthetics, to come together as a creative community and to share each other's creative process. I'm Priya Bangal, one of the founding members of Samvad, and I thank you for joining me today for this discussion about the VR Dancing Festival that was organized by Aalokam in New York City last weekend. This festival was curated by Maya Kulkarni and featured works by four brilliant dancers, all of whom are with us today. And this festival, in its rich and varied content, rich, varied, but tightly packed offering, actually contributed a great deal to the vibrant cultural landscape of New York City. We have with us today two audience members from this festival, Mr. Prem Shankar, who is well known to many of us as an eminent economist, journalist, and author, but he has also been an avid and enthusiastic audience of Indian dance for many decades and across multiple continents. Mr. Jha is joining us today from Cambridge, Massachusetts. We also have Paul Herb from New York. Paul is a former ballet dancer, a performer, an artist, a connoisseur of the arts, and also a practitioner of voice movement therapy. Welcome, Paul and Mr. Jha, and thank you for joining us. And thank you again, everybody who is joining us live on YouTube this morning or this afternoon. And for those of who were present at the festival to watch, or even the others, if you would like to ask questions to our participants or have any comments, feel invited to type them in the live chat box on YouTube, and we will do our best to address them during this conversation. Please keep your comments and questions concise, so it's friendly for a live conversation. And yes, we have a lot of participants, a lot of ground to cover. So without losing much time, let's get right to it. I think I would first like to ask a question to Paul. Let me just change my view. Okay. Paul, with your background in the arts and specifically in dance, but not necessarily in dance from India, what were some of the most striking aspects of this festival to you? What resonated the most, and any other broad impressions that you would like to share with us?
Are you asking me to talk about my background, or were you just
no, about your impressions from the festival? And
gotcha. I'm catching up. I felt treated. I liked the intimacy of the theater, and I really felt that the performance was very personal and close and involving in that intimate theater. My biggest impression of the evening was that was maybe a little more aesthetic, in that I saw this journey. I really liked the vocal beginnings, the sort of Maya's incantations or invocations, and they informed the way I experienced what was happening. And of course, I've had a week to reflect on this, and that will be reflected, I think, in what I say next. I really felt the evening went in a full circle, but it kind of started from the end of the circle with Jin's piece being so unbridled, and not only rooted in the soil of movement. And that was what Maya was saying in the introduction. It's like leaving, kind of getting off the rails and just needing to move and express from a really core, organic, unlanguaged place. That's what I took away from that piece anyway. And the longing that she talked about in the end of her introduction, I saw then demonstrated in the second piece, where everything Sapna did was so impeccably done and precise. And at the same time, it was indicating sort of the rails that Jin was leaving to do more freestyle. But it was very grounding and very satisfying to watch. And I could see how that could be a home, to be home. And that was part of the language, introducing it, to be home in that form. And so that was really delicious in its own more formal way. And then moving into Kaustavi's piece, it was really, I think, felt playful, like even within a semi-formal style, you can have fun and freedom of movement that you can blend in, but it's still very much of kind of a storytelling. And so it felt like I was being, treated to a story. And then Mesma's piece was in the form of what I would call the form of theater. And so it was very, it moved more into the unpredictable and unknown. Maya introduced it as a character study. And I think that's what it was. And I had a sense of kind of not being, so that those two pieces before it were less and less controlled. And then the piece that Mesma did was even more beyond control. And yet it was still with it sort of in the formal framework of what a theater piece looks like. And that left me kind of coming back in my reflections afterward to Jin's piece of just like needing to move, needing your body to fly. And that's what I was feeling when I was watching her. It felt free and it felt unbridled. So that was my impression of the evening. It was very satisfying. Like I say, enjoyed the speaking and the setting and everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for sharing those impressions. And we will circle back to them, have Mayadi and the others circle back to them also. But before that, briefly, I would like to hear from Mr. Jha about Mr. Jha, you have been watching Indian dance for a very long time. You have watched some eminent artists in their prime, on the prime of their careers, and you've lived and worked in New Delhi. For you, how did the works presented in this performance fit into the trajectory that Indian arts have evolved in? And what were some of your impressions of the festival?
Thank you for asking me, Priya. The most striking single feature, which was common to all the four presentations, was this desire, this need, this almost sort of a compulsion to widen to loosen up, to widen the envelope of Indian classical dance. And as you know, the envelope has the three elements in it. The three main elements are Natya, pure dance, and Nritya, pure dance, Natya, the drama, and Abhinaya. Now, in India, we've got used to a whole system of presentation in each of the major forms, which we are now very familiar with. And here, the interesting thing was, to me, was the way that Maya has actually tried to open up the envelopes. These have become almost, envelopes which are so beautiful in themselves that they become a trap. They discourage you from trying to open the envelope and widen its ambit. Whereas this is what was true to a greater or lesser extent in all the four pieces, as I think all of you would agree. The Mohiniyattam was beautiful, but it was the least, because I believe, Sapna, you had the least time to prepare it. I just loved both the moments when the dance took off from what is familiar into what is new. And it wakes you up intellectually, it wants you to understand. And one of my first reactions to Maya, which she got quite annoyed with me, was that, look, our problem with India in Indian dance has always been, we have never tried to explain Abhinaya to our audiences. But she said, that's precisely what we did at the beginning. And I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean, within the dance itself. You know, I was thinking in terms of, something like the Metropolitan Opera, where you've got the translations of the text in front of you. If we had translations of the Abhinay in front of us, I mean, every form of our dance would, I believe, be greatly enriched. But the point is not that the dance itself needs to have its envelope opened, and it's a magnificent effort. The best test of this for me was the way the time flew by. I once looked at my watch. I said, "My God, it's 10 to 8 already," and it had gone. And I must tell you, each piece was beautiful in itself, and they were at varying levels of experimentation. I think the most experimental of all was Mesma's. It was striking, it was dramatic, it was experimental also in that Maya had gone out of the traditional Indian themes and devotional themes, and gone into Greek tragedy, which I think was great. And this is long overdue. And thank you very much for that. And I hope others will try to do it too, and there is so much Greek drama that we could so easily try and incorporate and use our language to express. But this is a begin. I think of this as only a beginning. And I hope that you will keep on doing it and keep on also being very critical of yourselves to say, okay, these things worked, these things didn't work, and then keep constantly reshaping, because that is how Abhinay got shaped in the first place, whatever it was 2,000 years ago. We can't just remain stuck in that trap forever. On the other hand, we also shouldn't be in too much of a hurry to leave it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jal. It was very insightful as well, very valuable. And, as a segue, I would like to now invite Maya to share her thoughts. What was your curatorial vision? And now that you've just heard reactions from two representatives of the audience, do you think it resonated the way you thought it would with the audience? And just, what's your perspective from being the curator of this? Maya, you're muted. Would you please unmute yourself?
Just a couple of things I want to say, because I'm more interested in finding out what the dancers themselves felt and what the two people who were in the audience heard. So that was, for me, this is very important. In terms of creation, I'm always driven by themes, ideas. And to me, this festival was a feast of ideas, okay? Right from the beginning, as Paul talked about Jin, this whole idea, which Jin expressed so beautifully. Then we come to Sapna, and Sapna jumped in 3 days, with the 3 days notice. But one of the things I heard constantly from audience, how beautifully she moved, how beautiful her Abhinaya was in the Padam piece. And some people thought that, well, it was not anything new, but we also know where we are at, from which to jump to the new. In other words, it provided a degree of contrast. So attempt was not to do everything new, essentially, but attempt was also to kind of tap the basis from which we came into where we're going now. So the other dancer who couldn't join us, and Sapna came in, was also going to do a traditional piece from Kuchipudi. So we would have had the same kind of distribution of ideas as we had then. I think that, like Prem said, when you have an idea and then it takes concrete shape in terms of a persona, a dancer, and what she does. So for me, that was the most rewarding things to be able to see. Also see what I can do better, what need not be done, what should be cut out, all that kind of editing, revising, rethinking is something that I learned a lot from all of you. But I enjoyed it thoroughly because I really saw ideas dancing, apart from dancers, dancing. So that's all I want to say about the festival.
Thank you, Mayadi. And it seems like the common thread in all of the comments that we've heard so far is that it's sort of moving, being rooted in the tradition and seeing where it is that we come from and belong, but then also see where we can go towards, what are the possibilities that come from that. So I would like to ask Jin, Paul referenced your work as, sort of coming full circle, it sort of started from the end of the circle. Jin, the work that you presented used the popular Tumri, Babul Mora Neher Chuto Hi Jai, as a central theme for your work. And it talked about, the Tumri talks about leaving one's home, leaving behind one's home. And in the case of your work, the home was dance or dance training, or, as you put it. So which was very, it was really a visual metaphor. It was meant to be seen. I will not attempt to describe it. Very beautifully done. But can you quickly share with us what prompted, was it the Tumri that inspired the piece, or were you having similar thoughts as Maya Di, and then the two of you together created the piece first and the Tumri sort of worked into it? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Priya. The idea came from Maya Didi. She had this idea. So the home is like kind of safe zone. We feel comfortable and safe, as she recited in the beginning of the introduction. So like being a traditional trained Kathak dancer or any dance form, we have this centuries old repertoire, which is very safe. If you practice well, if you trained well, you cannot really go wrong in there. Now we are living in a different era, and then we're trying to kind of whenever we're trying to go out of the box or trying to explore a little more beyond that traditional rim, is very exciting, but at the same time it's very what do you call it? Nerving experience, and also you got anxious because there's not how to I mean, because being a performer, you like to do good, right? So what is the limit in that, and how to explore, am I doing the right way? It's like you're going and, okay, I've grown up and I'm going away from home, I want to be independent, make my own life. Now what is the right direction? We don't know. It's, so it's trial and error. It's like exploring the life. It's the same, I see it as the same kind of concept. You're trying to go make your own life, and then there's always excitement, but there's always this anxious somehow behind you. So this is how I approached towards this whole piece, especially second piece. I wish I had more time to work on this more thorough, but because my Didi was there to just kind of giving me some guide, so it was really helpful for me to kind of create something in that short period of time. But I think the Tumuri was one of my favorite as well. So it somehow it went very well, and to show that anxiousness, unnerving, unsettled, but exciting, So for that, I created 6.5 beats. So half beat creates that kind of unsettled feeling. It's not like to bar. So to give that nuance, and also in terms of the tempo, purposely I brought it certain tempo to create that tension. So it's exciting, but it's not always happy merry-go-round and exciting. You have always, there's something behind you. You get nervous. I think this whole process for me in creating this whole short period of time is actually an experience of this reflection of this. Okay, I'll have fun, but there's always nervousness behind me. Okay, I don't know how it's going to come out, kind of thing. So it went, and I think somehow all came together in the same direction, and then that's what I did.
Thanks, Jin, for sharing that. But yeah, it does seem like, because of the uncertainty of the times we live in, stepping in at the last minute and sort of stepping up to the challenges seems like a theme for a lot of walks of life, and it was true for this festival as well. I just want to say that while I'm going from person to person, making sure that we cover everything that we want to and everybody has a chance to speak, also feel free to interrupt at some point if you want to ask somebody a question or talk to each other and address something that you just heard from someone. Okay, I see Mayadi raising her hand, so I will let you speak.
Very quickly, I just wanted to, audience to know that this 6.5 beat was brilliant. It was like a heartbeat, and it was beautifully done. That selection of it, because Jin is also a tabla player, so she understands rhythm even more deeply than Kathak dancers do, So I just want to compliment her on that. It was really brilliant.
Can I just ask one question? Jin, can you speak the 6.5 beats for a moment? Because I'm dying to know how it worked. I know 6, I know 7, of course, but
Okay, this is I created. There's no such tal or anything. So I made it for this, created for this piece. So tin, so tin, na, tin, na, tin, 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 na, tin, na, tin, 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 na, tin. Na, tin, tin, goes it like this.
I got it.
This is a bass line, but I studied very slow tempo.
Right.
So, and then I kind of play around based on, so it's, actually I use a tin, tak, din, tak, din, 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 tak, din, tak, din, din, because I had a cajon in my mind when I created this. So the cajon, the din and tak, so the contrast of this sound in terms of graph, and then the tension creates by the sound and the gap in between. So it's not going an exact, but I created certain gaps to create that tension. So
well, you've explained to me exactly why I felt the dance drove me forward. It really did. Thank you. It pulled or drove, but there was sort of you're constantly, you're constantly slightly off balance. So you're moving ahead to stay in balance. That kind of thing. Thank you.
So my next question is for Kaustavi. Kaustavi, your dance was centered around 3 characters: a peacock, a cloud, and lightning, and which you brought to life very vividly, through very powerful, very virtuosic work. And you said in the program notes, you and Mayadi had said that it's going to be presented in the Shilpa Natanam style that Mayadi has developed. And so you are trained in Odissi, in classical Odissi. Did you find that the work that you were creating and about to create with Mayadi required you to step out of the Odissi idiom? Or did you find yourself in a similar position as Jin and the others, that you wanted to step out or you wanted to push the boundary and see what possibilities it brought, and therefore this was created to see what the possibilities were? Like, which came first and how did the process work?
I mean, if I may just flip your question on its head, Priya, that was not a project at all. Thinking about the Odissi or Odissi tradition or as a launching pad or not was not a project. I felt the project has always been with Mayadi. The project is her choreographic imagination, visualization, imagery, and that's the project. And whatever comes out of my body is, you used very beautiful language in the program. It's steeped in Odissi. That's the word. Like, my body is, even if I try to do Bharatanatyam, it will look terribly steeped in Odissi. So I think the project was not to think beyond, explore out of the box. No, none of that. I'm speaking for myself only. The project is to really bring the choreographer's thought to fruition in an embodied capacity. And she would show sort of geometric sketches, affective sketches, say some abhinaya sort of ideas, right? And it would come out in a technical vocabulary, and that technique is based in Odissi for sure, because there has to be a technique for the body to communicate, right? I do think my body is steeped in a particular vocabulary, a particular technique. However, the content and the presentation both are far from the traditional repertoire. So I'm not necessarily even thinking of, hey, am I in Odissi? Am I not in Odissi? That's not the project. When I'm doing Odissi, I'm doing Mangalacharan, Jagannath Swami Nayana Pathagami, but when I'm showing Jagannath in this Shilpanatinam style, I'm not thinking about connecting those dots. I'm only thinking of bringing Mayadi's thought to fruition. Like here, I'm really thinking of myself as the choreographer's muse, and not thinking of how far or how not far I am from any benchmark of any sort. I hope that answers your question.
Mhm.
It does. And an adjacent question, you or Maya, either of you can answer it. Do you, when during this process, do you find yourself looking for newer syntax? When bringing that choreographic vision to life, do you often find yourself saying, no, what we have is, in tradition, so to say, it's not working. We need to find something new, or let's do this, and therefore this doesn't look like Odissi or Bharatanatyam or whatever it's that you're working with.
Like I'll just quickly say, Mayadi, please jump in. Well, so my training from, a typical training has not only been in Odissi. I've also, alongside Odissi, trained in Uday Shankar style, and I've been with them for 14 years and been in their company. So the point of this is, my idea of classical is not as is different than a person who's steeped just in Odissi, right? So I think that's my baseline, if I may say. But at the same time, I do have to appreciate the absolute rigor in the classical in the classical world. In any case, in terms of syntax, I think my body is my body, right? And you jump in Odissi and you don't as well, right? So I do think the Odissi is expanding. Definitely the kinesphere, right? Or whatever, the maximum sphere I can draw, I definitely feel it's much larger in Shilpananatyam, and that's a little liberating for me. I have a friend, she tells me it's a little bit outlet for the inner modern dancer in me. So I love it. I really do. And the performance is a bonus. And thanks to all Aalokam and all the organizers, the process is my biggest takeaway. The process with Mayadi is just so enriching. And it's really a way of me to really like improve in ways that I have not thought about. I'll stop there. I can go on and on.
Thank you. Thanks, Kaustavi. So, Sapna, I want to talk to you next about your performance. Mohiniyattam is a form that we don't see as much as some of the other forms, in general, but also specifically in the US. So thank you for bringing your artistry to us in a very eloquent, very arresting performance. You performed two very traditional pieces from the Mohiniyattam repertoire. And one of them was a traditional padam with a very, a sanchari that explores the shades of a character. And how was your experience in presenting this form at a festival that sort of attempted to push the boundaries? How did you feel to be there and do your work?
So as we all know, I jumped on board of this ship like 3 days before the performance, the event. So when Mayadi called me and asked me to be part of it, I trusted her trust in me. So I said yes. It was interesting. It was a challenge to put together something in 3 days. Even though one of the pieces that when I discussed with Mayadi, one of the pieces that I did was a piece that I've been performing a lot lately, and I was comfortable. It was well settled in my body. But then she also wanted something with a little bit more contrast compared to the more abstract dance piece. That was the first piece. So we thought about doing something with some abhinaya in it. And that's how we decided on this padam. Interestingly, this padam I had learned a while back, and I hadn't danced it for a long time now. So the process became very interesting for me because I had to work on it, sort of edit the music and re-choreograph it also a little bit to fit into the time slot and what we wanted to do. So that was a very interesting process. I did not get much time to do it. Basically one evening after I got back from work, and I was thinking like, okay, I have to get the sequence. I shouldn't get the sequence wrong on stage because I don't have enough time to practice this. But, it was challenging, but it was also a fun process because, I had to go with the flow. So I decided I'm not going to stress myself out, just go with the flow and trust, like you often say, Priya, like trust my training and trust the process of training that I've been through. So I think it helped. And I enjoyed doing that padam actually, because I have not done something like that in a bit. Recently, I haven't danced something like that. So it was very enjoyable to let myself go in that piece. When I say let myself go, traditional pieces, we know traditional pieces like Mr. Jha was also saying, they have a certain structure to them, a certain stylized structure to them. But to make them resonate with the people who are watching you, you have to bring something of yourself into it, even within that stylized format. So that's what I was trying to do. And I enjoyed performing it, and I had some good feedback, which I believe people enjoyed watching it. And like you said, Mohiniyattam has not been seen even in its traditional format much in the US. It's seen much less than compared to Bharatanatyam and forms like Odissi. It's a brilliant form, and when well danced, it is something that can draw the audience into it. It does have that kind of power, that form. So I was glad to present a dance of Mohiniyattam, even though it was traditional, even though they were traditional pieces plopped in the middle of some, an event that tried to push boundaries with other forms. So it was a learning process, and I quite enjoyed doing it, I should say.
Maya,
before we go to Mesma, I want to make this point. The classical form, the way it is, it always narrates. That means, and it kind of condenses through mudras, events, situations, persons. So you don't, what I do is to kind of unpack that. And instead of describing something, I have people who are dancing my pieces become that. Okay, so there is a process of transformation. So Kaustavi could have told this story in the conventional way, okay, by describing this happened and then that happened and then that happened. But I didn't want her to do that. I wanted her to become the peacock and become this. And same thing with Mesma. All the work that I have done with Mesma, which has been the longest period of work, has always been not describe, become. Right. So what Sapna is talking about, that you have to put yourself out there, your own thinking, etc., has to go in to really dance Shilpanatanam. Otherwise, you cannot do it. I'll stop there.
I think I saw somebody else raise their hand. Was it Mesma? No. Okay. Sorry. Oh yes, Kaustavi. Yes.
I just had a small thing to connect Prem Jhaji's this idea of how the dance itself is making it, translating to the audience. No captions, nothing. But I think Shilpanatanam, what Mayadi just said, does exactly that. It's really unpacking the heavy condensation of, say, Sapna's gestural codified vocabulary, which is hard to unpack to non-initiated audiences. But I think this way of Shilpanatanam's deconstructing that helps translate some of those nuance and complexity. Just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Kaustavi. So Mesma, you're next. Your piece, Media's Passion, was extremely well received by the audience, and it was the central character of the piece was Medea, a character from Greek mythology, who is a very passionate woman and a woman with many shades to her character. It was very dramatic, very powerful, if I may dare to describe it, and it was very, very impactful as you carried the audience through the story or through the various episodes of Medea's story. In you also have a background in classical Indian dance. You have trained extensively. You've been working with Maya for a long time, and that background sort of provides a lot of source material to draw upon, which you have done in the past, and a gamut of emotions, a variety of characters, and all of that. So why Medea? Why a woman from Greek, or a character from Greek mythology, and why choose to dance Medea?
That's a good question, Priya. I trust you to ask difficult question and you don't disappoint. So Maya and I have been working now for about 10 years together, and we are all constantly in a dialogue about process, ideas, sharing our passion for visual arts as well as for dance. There is a generative energy that is constantly flowing with Mayadi. So I've become accustomed to that way of working in the last 10 years. And even the term Shilpanatanam, I will say this, that, it came out when we were on a walk along the Hudson one evening. And so all these organic generative processes of working. And then when we visited the Metropolitan Museum of Art once, where there was a retrospective of Eugene Delacroix's paintings, and in the gallery, among hundreds of other paintings, hung this magnificent portrait of Medea. Both of us, both Mayadi and I, were completely transfixed by it. Neither one of us moved for about an hour, and we just stared at the power of this painting, where Medea is there, bare-breasted, and she's clasping her two children and momentarily turning her head to see if anyone's looking, because she's about to kill her children. And that moment that the painter captured us in a very powerful way. So when you're confronted with something like that, you're left with no choice, And Mayadi had this idea that she wanted to make a dance of it. So the dancing Medea stepped out of the painting of Medea. And Greek themes do offer a whole rich gamut of human drama, and for theater, you need that. You need conflict, you need contrast. To enhance that is the beauty of theater. And so this act of theater of Medea started before we stepped foot on stage. It started a long time ago. And it has been a work in progress for a very long time. And like has already been stated, Kaustavi talked about this and Mayadi talked about this. This style of Shilpanatanam, it frees you up. It frees you to move in ways in which that character or that particular moment in, I don't want to use the word story because it's much more than storytelling. That moment in the dance requires you to do. So I couldn't have danced Medea, for example, in a classical Bharatanatyam style. I couldn't have. I don't think it would have. It would have emerged with the truth that it demands. And that's what Shilpanatanam provides. It provides you the ability to look for the truth in the movement that character is asking for. So why Medea? it was, I don't think it was a conscious decision that we want to create something, that Mayadi wanted to create this dance based on some Greek theme. No, we just came across it, it moved us, and we were in its grip. And she was thinking about it, and she was trying to figure out, how to retell Medea, because Medea has been done many times. She's been done in opera. She's been painted. She's been done in dance. Martha Grant did her beautiful work, Cave of the Heart. It's a very powerful treatment of this already powerful figure. So why dance it? I think sometimes you're just in the grip of a thing, and then you have to give in to its demand, And then Mayadi wanted the piece to be a character depiction rather than a linear story of Euripides' play, which is, quite well known to a lot of people. So, why tell the same story again? There are other ways in which we can treat that. So I think Shilpanattanam again steps in there, where you have that ability. It gives you the push and the wings to fly. That's all I'll say for now, and then we can interact more about that. But that's what comes to my mind at the moment.
I think the test is whether the people who are in the audience found the character persuasive, convincing. Was she, the way the Medea was danced, was she convincing? The way the the peacock was danced, was it convincing? Was it persuasive? So I think that's the ultimate test. And I don't know. Only those who see it can respond to that question.
Well, luckily, we have a couple of people here who saw it. So I think, Paul and Mr. Jha, I think you're up. What were your impressions?
Yes. Paul, please, why don't you go ahead first?
Well, one theme I was listening to in the last bit of time is that, Sapna talked about really showing up in her piece, and we haven't really talked about that, because I think in any performance there's a quality of arrival of the artist, they're cloaked in their character maybe, or their art form, and yet they're naked, and you feel that. And so it's very alive and very relatable. And I think all of the performers did that in their own, in the drama, in the playfulness, in the traditionalness, in the wildness. Each character was present and in a state of risk. And I felt that as an observer, which I appreciate and that's what I hear in Maya's talking about, being the role, not just playing it. There's a way even of playing a role where you're still very naked and present, and it's exciting for the audience.
Thank you, Paul. Should I come in now? Is it okay?
Yes, please.
Well, I must say the way that you've all explained ultimately and brought together the idea of Shilpanattanam for me has been a revelation. And I have, all the time that I was listening to Kaustavi and Jin and in fact all of you saying, explaining your ideas at different points of entry into the festival, and also your dance itself. I was thinking of one thing, that the one envelope that is, I think, so wonderfully being sort of explored, the opening of, is enactment. All our Abhinay has been either about the portrayal of a particular god, goddess, an untouchable woman wanting to get a view of Shiva and having to move around behind to get around Nandi in order to be able to see Shiva, and all that. It's recounting a story. But in fact, a lot of our Abhinaya also has, drama, because the dancer enacts two roles, and the Krishna and Radha, for example, alternately, and but this is enactment in a different way, because what you're doing is it's a person, the person you're. Let's take Medea. It's not just the story of Medea that's being told. It's not that she's angry, but you're portraying this. You want to bring out of its shell the betrayal and the anger itself. And the same thing was true with the peacock. I loved the way that Kaustavi became the peacock for me. And with its pride and its magnificence and its awareness of it. Now, these were moments, there were special moments in a very fine overall performance, and you will only have moments, but if you have a few moments like that in a dance performance, and you remember them afterwards, and they stay with you, well, you've got what you wanted from that entire evening, that recital, that performance, and all one wants to do to see more of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think that was, Mayadi, sorry, were you about to respond?
No.
Okay. Because just, the continuation of what Mr. Jha was saying is that for me, the most fascinating part of the evening, or the most gripping part of the evening, was the contrast between the characters from the Shilpanatana style also. Kaustavi's piece, at least until a point, was very light-hearted and very, like the boredom of the peacock and the sort of inflated ego of the cloud. It was brought, there was some brought about in a very light-hearted way, very vividly done by Kaustavi. And then Medea was very passionate, very intense, turning dark later. So Mayadi, what is it, how do you work with your dancers to, tap into what the character demands?
First of all, we all trained in the Navarasa whole palette of emotion, but that's not enough. What fascinates me are the minute things in human experience, the things that then they show on the face through Abhinaya. So what I do is that in my dance script, I write dialogues, and I repeat these dialogues when I'm working with Mesma, Kaustavi, and I'm constantly speaking these dialogues. So it kind of becomes their dialogues, they come to own it. And then they express it from within. So I bet while Kaustavi is doing whatever she's doing, that dialogue is going on in her head, because I've said it so many times, as we are working towards that piece. Similarly with Mesma, this was very difficult, because I was telling her to show humiliation, pain, anger, and anger going to the level of revenge, and that coldness of the revenge, or sometimes really, going mad about it. Now, this is a whole range of emotions, okay, which in the standard Abhinaya pieces that we do in our classical repertoire, whether they're padams or varnams or whatever, we don't explore this, we should, but we don't. That's a fact as it stands now on stage. I'm making a very general and broad, statement, and forgive me, there are always exceptions to this, but notwithstanding that, I think by and large, and this minute work, this fine tuning of transition from one felt emotion to another felt emotion. See, how many times, you can ask Mesma, I said, Mesma, think about this. You're clasping two very soft, fleshy little children, to your breast. How will it feel? Okay. Now, this is the kind of thing that one has to do in order to bring out the character. And for these artists to feel that, not that they can't, but you have to open their hearts there, and their own emotions, things that they know must come out at that particular moment. That's where the art is. The art is to be able to bring that out at the precise moment in that particular dance piece.
Mesma?
Yes, I just want to make a quick point in addition to what Mayadi was talking about. You know, in Indian classical dance training, we are never allowed to look ugly on stage. We're never allowed to contort a face, to contort a body in a certain way that doesn't look beautiful. In fact, there are rules that you cannot bend this way or that way because it will distort the form. And they're there for a reason. And I respect those rules, absolutely. And they must be adhered to when you are dancing the classical form. But in Shilpanatanam, what happens is, more often than not, you don't look pretty. I've noticed that. And you have to be okay with that. You have to embrace all facets of human, the difficulty of being human in this world. You have to embrace it fully. And not only embrace it, but you have to really let go of all the inhibitions that can inhibit you from reaching to the truth of that expression, And I felt that while dancing Medea, of course, for obvious reasons, because she contorts. I mean, does she contort? But then the similar moments were there in Plato's allegory of the cave. There was a similar way. I mean, that piece demands a whole lot more variation of characters. There are 24 characters in that piece. Medea had one. So, with each character, there's a different pattern of moving. There's a different demand that that character puts on you. And then you can't be trapped in this question of how am I looking? Am I looking good or not in this moment on stage? Should I sit in a certain way? Should I, So you have to really forget all that and completely leave that and inhabit your own body, whatever, for the lack of a better term. You have to inhabit the character actually, and then the body follows. So I find this very freeing. I find this very, it sets you free from the confines of being perceived in a certain way. And I think that is highly liberating for anybody, let alone an artist.
Very insightful. Thank you, Mesma, for sharing that. It's, in a lot of ways, this process of making dance is a very personal process, and it's thank you for even being on camera and talking about that to both of you and all of you, really. I also want to say a special thank you to Paul Herb and Mr. Prem for joining us, because we often hear from artists and choreographers, but we don't often involve members of the audience in these conversations. We don't often, once we leave the theater, the artist and the audience is just disconnected and never becomes part of a larger dialogue on art and aesthetics. So it is very, very special to have you both. Thank you for spending your time, spending this Saturday afternoon with us, Mr. Jha and Paul. This, we at Samvad and all of us really appreciate it. Well, I think with that, we are almost at the end of an hour. And as expected, this has been a very gripping conversation, but I'm afraid that that's all we have time for today. So again, I want to thank you. Thank you to all the dancers. Thank you, Jin, Kaustavi, Sapna, Mesma. Mayadi, again, thanks for joining us, sharing your thoughts with us. I also want to thank Aalokam and Bharathi Penneswaran for organizing this concert. It was we are all starved for live art after 2 years of being indoors and watching things online. So it was very just exciting to be outside in the evening in New York and come to this show. So thanks again on behalf of Samvad Boston. And for those of you who don't know us, we are a community of artists primarily based in Boston, but we are also now, we have members and friends all over the world. We meet sometimes in person, sometimes virtually, sometimes a hybrid mix of both. And if you would like to join us, please follow us on Facebook or send us an email at samvadboston@gmail.com, or Facebook is, I think, facebook.com/samvadboston. And please join the community, join our conversations, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can continue to bring more conversations to you of relevance and of importance to the arts, to dance and music. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.